All right, Knicks fans, welcome back to New York Got Game. Joining us now is one of Brooklyn's finest. He is a master storyteller, lyrical architect, diehard Knicks fan through and through. He's got a brand new EP dropping this Friday, December 5th. It's called Views of a Lifetime. And just like the title suggests, we're about to tap into his perspective on this team, this city, and his new project. Straight out of Bed-Stuy, do or die, the one and only, my guy, Skyzoo, joins me now. Sky, what's going on, man?
Yeah. What's the deal, man?
Not much, man. I'm good. Just hey, Knicks have been looking good. 19 games, they've been looking pretty good so far. I know you are happy about that. I know you got to be happy about the start to the season.
Yeah, absolutely. When you make such a drastic change like we did over the summer, coaching change and everything like that, obviously the culture is going to change and the locker room could potentially change. But knowing that those things did not, that's always great. I'm always going to remember, as much as I love us, I'm always going to remember little moments where I'm like, that could come back to bite us, right? Like there was a Bulls game early in the season, and I'm like, that could come back to bite us. We should have won that. There was an Orlando game, 2 Orlando games, that could come back to bite. Because then you get to the point in April when there's a difference between 48 wins and, 58 wins or something like that. And you're like, those were the games. You know what I mean? It was those little guys. It's not losing to OKC. It's not losing to, one of these powerhouse teams. It's losing to a Chicago who gets stomped by 30 the next night in Boston or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, those are the nights, So those little hiccups. I got like 4 games that I've already seen. I'm like, we should have won that one. But to your point, we do look good. We do look like the threat that people wanted us to be. And I think as the season goes on and we continue to shake off those changes, I'm not going to call them growing pains because that would feel disrespectful to Mike Brown, but I would say the changes, we should be all right.
Yeah, I mean, look, 13-9 to start the season. It's now, it's 13-6. I don't want to put too many losses on the Knicks here. 13-6 to start the season. Don't want to do that. But Sky, before we get into the music, I guess how would you describe your view? You did a little bit of this of the Knicks start to the season so far. What has stood out to you from the jump in this season when you look at this Knicks team?
Well, just those moments, like I said, but also too the fact that the continuity of the locker room from last season was so strong that something as catastrophic as a coaching change, when you had Tibbs in there for 4 or 5 years or whatever it was, at least it felt like 4 or 5 years, the coaching change didn't shake that, right? The roster stayed the same for the most part. We upped the bench a good bit. But when a coaching change happens, man, a lot of things kind of shake. We've seen it over the years with any and every team. And that didn't happen with us. So that's a testament to the bond and the relationship that the players have in that locker room, which speaks volumes. If you didn't know it before, like if you didn't know it last year based on how they was moving, here's the proof now. That no matter who comes in, no matter what changes are made, no matter what program or regime we got to adjust to, we're still locked in. We're still here. And that that's monumental. So that's been a big part of our saving grace. Somebody like a Josh Hart, who has always literally been the heart of the city and wore that on his sleeve since he got here. Yeah, I'm cool going to the bench. Let's go. Like that, those types of things, are priceless. Those types of moments of camaraderie and respect for the team and for winning, that stuff is priceless. And it goes into those 13 wins, like you said, which should have been like 17, but, it goes to them 13 wins.
Yeah. We always want more. We always feel like they should have had more. It's the
greedy
losses.
New Yorker, man.
Yeah, it's the losses that keep you up at night. So ones you're thinking about, like you said, late in the season, like, man, we could have had a little bit more. But listen, winning 13 out of your first 19, not too shabby there. But
yeah. I'll take that.
Yeah, you'll sign for any time. From your vantage point, as a lifelong Knicks fan, right? Which you've been on the show with me multiple times. Everybody knows that about you. What feels different to you about this group compared to last year's squad? Because you talked about the continuity that they had, even though they changed the coach. Well, what feels different about this group that maybe has you saying, okay, they could do something?
I think they know the expectations that are on them. A lot of times players like to not openly say it, not admit it, not, put that on their jacket, for lack of a better term. But it feels like they know it. Like, this is the year. we got to win it. If we don't do it this year, it could get bad because there's not too many excuses that are left on the table. I'm not saying that they ever signed up for excuses, but there were reasons. There were reasons in the past. This year with, Boston being where they are as far as Tatum, Indiana with Halliburton and, Miles Turner leaving and, Dame leaving Milwaukee and Giannis, Milwaukee just being Giannis and friends, right? Like it's the window is there. I mean, perfect example is Detroit. Detroit is taking advantage of that full steam ahead. I mean, they've won like 100 games in a row. That's a perfect example. And that's not a team that anyone thought would be ready yet, right? They pushed us to the brink last year in the first round, but everybody said, they're going to need another 2 or 3 years and maybe some veteran presence in that locker room to really take that next step. But they're in the right direction. They blew past that direction. These guys at the top of the East, no one saw that coming. With the roster that they have, no one saw that. So they're playing with confidence and a chip on their shoulder, and those are 2 deadly combinations when it comes to winning. Those go hand in hand. Confidence and a chip on your shoulder, it's David and Goliath, man. Anything can happen. So we're seeing that. We're seeing the Detroits know what's at stake. The Orlandos know what's at stake. The lane is wide open. And I hope the Knicks see that as well. And going back to your question of what feels different, It feels like they do see that. Sometimes when they play, you see that sense of urgency on them because they know, every game counts because this is the year to get that parade on 33rd and 7th, man. Because next year, Tatum's coming back with a vengeance. Hallie is coming back with a vengeance. And all these guys, this is the year to take advantage of these moments.
Yeah, and listen, a lot of Knicks fans felt that. You could feel that this season. I was talking to Chuck D before the start of the season about this, and he was telling me that too. You could feel that this year, right? The most anticipated Knicks season in 30 years, and you could definitely feel it. But I felt like now was a perfect time to talk to you, me knowing you as a Knicks fan, because you talked about Brown, you talked about the switch coming from Tibbs, but what's your level of belief in Mike Brown's system now that we've seen about a month of a sample size with him coaching? And how would you define this Knicks team's identity right now? When you look at Mike Brown and what he's doing, how are you feeling about it, and what's the identity of this Knicks team right now?
I like his system. I like that he's been able to come in right away and not have to ease his way into the role. You see him on the bench. I think it was maybe the first, second game, yelling at players and really getting after it. And as somebody who's, a new coach to this team, he's not a new coach in the league. He's been around forever, but a new coach to this team, to this city and this group of players to come in and day one, the new teacher is yelling at the students as if he's been in the school for 10, 15 years. That's amazing. And them taking that and them being good with that and there being no issues of anything as far as tension or anything, that's amazing. So it shows that he's not afraid of the moment. He's not afraid of the light. You're going to need that in this city. On top of that, offensively, we're seeing the ball move. We're seeing speed, which is what we wanted, which is what everyone talked about during the Tibbs regime. Like, we got to get faster. We got to get modern when it comes to offense. We got to do all those things. Of course, everyone's going to compare the defense because Tibbs was a defensive wizard. I think using that bench more has been great. I do think we need more on the bench. We were very excited at the beginning of the year, over the summer rather, of what the bench would be. Love the Clarkson addition and all that, but I think outside of Clarkson, I think we do need a little bit more, and I feel like they probably would address it at the trade deadline in February. I think the bench does need a little more of a boost. It can't just be all on Jordan Clarkson, at least on paper. McBride is dope. He's going to do his thing. Josh Hart coming off the bench is dope. He's going to do his thing. I still like Hart better as a starter because he provides that grit and being able to get after it on rebounds and not needing the ball. But then the guys coming off the bench, everyone off the bench has to be able to provide an offensive spark because now it's the bench and we may have to run up the numbers and help pad the lead that the starters got or fill in the blanks that the starters may not have had tonight. So there's a little bit more of a weighty responsibility on the bench, believe it or not. So I like Josh Hart better in the starting lineup because defensively he's needed, energy-wise he's needed, but we don't need you offensively as much in that starting lineup because you got Brunson, you got McCall, you got Towns, you got OG even who can give you 25. But now the bench guys, we're really looking for you to give us 15, 20 tonight if you can. That's a different responsibility to put on Josh Hart as well as being the rebound guy and the defensive guy and the energy guy and the going to the stance for the loose ball guy. And, I like him better in the starting lineup, but I love that he was willing to go to the bench. I think they do need to address at least one more piece. Malcolm Brogdon was that piece, and then, he tapped out for whatever reason at the beginning of the season. And that was a blow. A lot of people forget about that moment, but that was a big blow. He was looked at, man, this guy might give us 14 points and 6 assists a night and lead this bench, and God forbid JB get a tweak in his ankle or something, we know we're good. And that was a big blow. It got swept under the rug really fast, but let's not forget that happened. So I think they do need to address one more piece off the bench that can be a reliable ball handler and a reliable scorer, preferably at the point position during the trade deadline or something, to be able to get that in there. But we look good. Offensively, we look good. Defensively, it's not what it was last year, but I hate the comparison with Brown and Tibbs. Like, let him get his time to do what he has to do, but time is ticking because the city is ready. And last year we was right there, So it's a conundrum for him.
Yeah. No, people are anxious about it. You said so. It's going to kind of go to where I was going to go next with you, but you just brought up the fact that you think they need a little bit more off the bench. And one of the things, every time I'm talking to fans, some people feel like they need another big. Some people feel like they need another wing. Some people feel like they need another backup point guard. The other day I was talking with my colleague Stephen Bondi, and he said to me, look, the Knicks are still, what he's hearing is the Knicks are definitely still looking for another backup point guard. Let me ask you this. Are you a believer in Tyler Kolek as that guy? Do you think he has time to earn that spot before we get to the trade deadline? Or you're kind of like, nah, they need a veteran presence and need to fill this right now?
I'm a believer in him down the road, and that's nothing against him.
Got you.
It's just the time is now. So having room to grow and needing time to grow would be great in an ideal situation. This isn't really an ideal situation because of the way everything ended last year. So it's go time, and the way everything panned out with certain players being off of rosters because of injuries, because of bad luck, because of, whatever it may be. The time is now. So I do like Kolek, but I know he's not who we should go to right off the bench after JB, because it is about right now. If this was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and the expectations were a little different, absolutely. I think you could have that room to stretch out, and do all of that. But I don't think you can ask that of him right now. I think they need to make a play of some sort. I don't mean a 36-year-old veteran, but somebody in that good 27 to 30 range. I don't know who that is. I'd have to look at, Hoops Hype or something like that. But, somebody who can come in off the bench and get busy right away at the point guard position, who scores and facilitates. That's preferably, ideally, what it'll be. Just like you said, Stephen Bondi noted,
Yep.
That is where my attention would go.
Yeah.
If I'm Leon Rose in World Wide West, that's where my attention would go. Who do we have that can handle the rock, putting it in the rim and putting it on the floor, throwing it up ahead, creating offense, creating that moment after JB sits down and gets a rest, or God forbid he tweaks something or whatever it is. And I like McBride a lot, but I think you need that super reliable guy who we know can score and pass the rock and has the experience, not a Kyle Lowry, not somebody who's been here a couple decades, but, somebody who has that experience behind him. I'm trying to think of somebody on the fly, but somebody who would have that. Brogdon was a nice situation.
Yeah.
It made a lot of sense. I don't know the story behind it. That's a story for another time, but it made a lot of sense. I was excited. We all were like, yo, we got Brogdon, and then it fell through.
What?
But, it is what it is.
I got a couple names for you, and it's funny because I talked to Steph about this before. Jose Alvarado from New Orleans. How do you feel about it?
Yep. He would be great.
New York
the
guy
only thing
too.
is the veteran, the veteran idea goes out the window with him because he is younger. But he would be great. Brooklyn guy, like you said.
Yep.
I like that a lot. He would be a dope name. I'm not mad at that. It just doesn't check the veteran box, but I just want to be careful with that. I don't mean veteran as in somebody who got drafted in, in 99, you know what I mean? Like, 99. It's just a nice window. Somebody about 27 years old or something. That type. Somebody around JB age and Julius Randle age, who obviously is not here, but, like Cat age and all that. That's what I mean.
I got you. He's kind of close to that range. There was another name I had that Stephen Bondi had tossed at me before. I don't know why it's escaping me, but the market is limited, but it'll open up. It'll definitely
Yeah.
open up as we get closer. Now, you just mentioned Josh Hart and him going to the bench, and Mike Brown. He recently tweaked the starting lineup, right? He kept Josh Hart and Deuce McBride. They've started the last 4 games, I believe, while bringing Mitchell Robinson back off the bench. What did you think of that move? And if the Knicks are smaller with that lineup, this obviously now with OG out, but do you like that move? And do you think that's something that Mike Brown should stick with? You really like Josh Hart starting, but do you like that lineup where you got Josh Hart in there or Deuce in there? Do you think that's better for this Knicks team?
I'm old school. I'm not a fan of small basketball in the starting lineup, but I think it's game to game. You know, there are certain teams where it makes sense to run a small lineup and just run them out the gym. And then there's certain teams where you have to play big. You know, your Orlandos and all those guys where you have to play big. So, you know, I think it depends on the night-to-night basis. And that's where having this type of roster makes so much sense and it's so advantageous because you have guys who don't have that ego, who would be okay. Mitchell Robinson, all right, cool, no problem. Josh Hart, all right, cool, no problem. You know, you have guys that are cool with that. And that's huge because I don't know of a lot of people who are like that. So that is where that comes in at. And like I said, I'm old school. You know, my favorite point guard, you know, growing up, it still is Penny Hardaway, 6'7". You know, I'm that guy. Like, yo, give me everybody tall. But, you know, in certain situations, it does make sense to go with a small lineup. And then tomorrow night, everybody may need to be 6'11" and better, you know? So it depends on who we playing that night. I think that's how you have to look at it. And that's what a great coach does.
Yeah, and I think that Mike Brown has shown to have the versatility, Sky, where he will mix and match depending on the opponent. And that's something I do like. I think that's the way you got to approach it, right? Depending on who you're playing, you want to mix. That's what the regular season is for, too. That's something I've always been saying. This is what this time is for. So when you have certain matchups in the playoffs, you have the ability, guys have already played these minutes together. Okay, we know what it's like with this lineup. Okay, we know what it's like with this lineup. And I think that flexibility is good for the Knicks. Now, with Jalen Brunson, there's some early MVP chatter around him again, especially after what he did in the Bucks win that we saw the other night. From a fan's perspective, do you think that he deserves this MVP chatter that we've been seeing from him? And do you think there should be maybe more respect put on Brunson's name for playing at an MVP level? What do you think about the way Brunson's played to start the season?
Well, his jersey says New York across the chest in blue and orange letters, so I'm always going to say yeah to that, without a doubt. I'm always going to say yeah to any MVP chatter with somebody wearing our jersey. So that's a given. Regard, they could score 2 points tonight if they get an MVP chatter wearing that jersey. I'm all for it. But Brunson is obviously once again proving who he is, who he's always going to be, and it's always going to be about putting respect on his name. No matter how much respect he's getting, it's always going to be about him getting more because we know he plays with that chip. We know he's been doubted and, you know, forgotten about and called undersized and everything since he was 12 years old. And you can see that in the way he plays. You can see it even in the way he does his interviews. The energy he gives is like he always has a chip. He always seems like something's going on, you know, and that's just a testament to him always having to fight and get it out the mud, as we like to say. Him getting those chances, he's dropping 30 or so a night and pulling us through, and it's to the point where, you know, anytime he throws up anything in the lane in the mid-range, you are expecting it to drop. And when you become that type of player, heavy is the head that wears the crown, but man, it's a beautiful shiny crown, you know. Like every time he gets in that lane, it's kind of like Dame Lillard. Anytime Dame would get in there, you're like, that's gonna drop. Anytime JB gets in that lane, gets to that spot, mid-range, especially a floater, you're banking that to drop. And if it doesn't drop, it's like, wait a minute, why are pigs flying, right? Like it feels like that. So when you become that kind of guy, you know, the sky's the limit, man. It's yours.
Yeah, no, heavy is a crown. He's a king in New York right now, playing like that.
Absolutely.
For sure. No doubt about that. Now, you mentioned you got Josh Hart. And Mike Brown the other day, he called him, quote, wild card mode. I like that. He said he throws the game into a blender with his energy.
Yeah.
What do you make of the impact that he's having right now, especially since returning to the starting lineup? Because a lot of Knicks fans last year in the playoffs, some of them were out on Josh Hart. And listen, he had some up and down moments, but right now he's shooting the ball well from downtown. He's rebounding well, and he looks confident back in this starting lineup. What do you make of what we've been seeing from him this year?
It goes to what I said. He has to start because like I said, it seems like as a starter, your your vest is heavier, your responsibility is heavier, and it's true. But coming off that bench, you need instant offense. That's any team in the league. Coming off that bench, you need instant offense. But if you're a starter as Josh Hart, you on any other team and you're starting two guard and you're expected to get 25 a night, that's one thing. But on this team with JB, McCall, OG, Cat, we don't need that from you. But you can still have the freedom and flexibility, right? Like they're gonna leave you open because they're afraid of JB, they're afraid of Cat, they're afraid of McCall. They know if OG get in there, it's a wrap. So they're gonna leave you open, and you can get the three ball going again, and you can get to the hole again, and you can play more free than all right. It's on me and Clarkson to run these numbers up in the next 7 minutes. That's a different responsibility. And growing up, everyone wants to start because if you start, you the man. But coming off that bench, that's a different responsibility, you know. So that's why I think he's so much more successful, even though he's not the 25 a night scorer and superstar scorer, whatever you want to call it. He's so much more successful in that starting lineup because his responsibility is a lot different than the other two guards who start and their responsibilities. His responsibility is a lot different in that starting lineup. But when you go to the bench, it's like you got to really, we need you to go out there and hit 5 shots in a row, bro. And that's not his game. But if he can just be the lunch pail guy to clean up and be the best offense, the best rebounding guard in the league, right? Like if continuing to be that guy that we've known, that's from him being in the starting lineup and having so many weapons at his disposal. There's more room for him to just fly freely, you know. So he has to start. He got to start, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued when OG comes back as to what Mike Brown does. Does he keep him in the starting lineup because he's playing so well right now? And you know what? I heard you say all that, Sky, and when you look at him, he's playing really confident right now. Even how he's letting the three fly. We know exactly. He had the injury with his finger, but he's just looking a lot more confident. And you know,
it's a different responsibility off that bench because we got to run these numbers up now. Either we're in a hole and we're being brought in because we're in a hole, or we're being brought in because our guys need a rest, and they ran the numbers up, and now we can't let that lead slip away, right? So it's a different responsibility, and Clarkson is great for that. He's somebody who's been a starter his life and been his whole life and been a bucket his whole life, but also became a bench guy and learned how to really flourish in that position. But a Hart, that's not for him, you know, to have to run up a bunch of numbers overnight. So for him to be on our starting team, not any other roster starting lineup, but for our starting lineup, makes a lot of sense for him. Anywhere else, you might say, no, he's better suited for the bench. But with this starting five, he makes perfect sense as a starter. I've been saying that for years. I'm a big Josh Hart fan.
Yeah, and he knows his role, and he does so many little things to me that contributes to winning for sure. So when you look at this Knicks team, Sky, what's your view of the Knicks ceiling this season? Does this feel like another 50-win type run, or does this feel like something bigger? Because you talked about the pressure that is on this team this season, right? And the players being aware of that pressure. But what's your view of this team? Like, what do you think they can do? What's the ceiling for this Knicks squad?
It has to be a 50-win minimum because you're going to compare everything to Tibbs, right? You're going to say, okay, Tibbs got us almost to the mountaintop, and then you get rid of him. Anything that gets done this year has to eclipse that. It can't even match it because if it matches it, it's like, well, we could have just kept that guy, right? So, like, you know, it has to eclipse it. So that's why the coaching search was so vicious because it's like whoever it is going to have to work cut out for them. It cannot go backwards and it can't be lateral. Like it has to go up. So they've got to eclipse 50 wins. They have to get to the NBA Finals in order for the coaching change to be a success. And I hate that for Mike Brown because that leaves very little room to grow and figure things out and get acclimated and get comfortable in your seat. But that's why they paid him what they paid him. You know, the Knicks have to go to the finals. I'm of the belief that they got to win it all because the East is wide open, as we're seeing with Detroit. And once you're in the finals, anything can happen. You got 7 chances. Anything can happen. You know, you could play against, you know, the 96 Bulls. 7 games, Madison Square Garden, 19,000 people screaming in abundance. Anything can happen.
You're putting more pressure on the Knicks.
Listen, their checks are pretty for real. They know the pressure
Facts,
they got. So
facts, yeah, facts. You're right about that. They got all the pressure there, and that's what the money's for. You're 100%
yeah,
right about that. All right,
and it's out of love. The pressure is out of
no,
love,
yeah,
man.
of
Pressure
course,
makes diamonds.
of course. Pressure makes diamonds. You're right about that. It's out of love. The fans want it so bad. We know this as native New Yorkers. The fans want it so bad. That's why the pressure's there, and it's been so long since they've seen this team win. So, listen, I say this all the time. If you're a Knicks fan, you got to like this pressure. You have to like these moments. You have to love it when the Garden is rocking in the spring, and you want to win. Because look, you've seen it. I don't got to tell you. You remember we're talking 6-7 years ago, 18 win seasons. You remember what that's like. So you don't want to go back there. You don't want to go back there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want this.
There's a feeling of expectation that existed in 92, 93, 94, those years where the Knicks were a top 3 team in the East always for good 4 or 5 years, 6 years in a row, so it was expected. It was like the good teams in the league are the Bulls, the Knicks, Sonics, the Suns, like that was what it was. Orlando during my bro Penny's era, but you knew who the top guys were, and there were years where the Knicks were in that every year, and it was early and mid 90s. Yeah, it was like, the Knicks are great, and so what? Water's wet. Like, that's the expectation. So when you get back to that, that's a great place to be in, but it does come with the pressure. And I think that is where the Knicks are. It's like, the Knicks are great. Absolutely. We expect them to be great. When you get to that point, if you're a Dolan, that's what you've been asking for. That's what you've been paying for, literally, right? Is to get to that place. So I think they are at that place where it's like, the Knicks are great. That's why I point out those Chicago losses and those Orlando losses. Like, those are teams you're supposed to smack those guys. Like, you lose to OKC, you lose to red hot Luka Lakers. Cool. You can expect and respect that. Even if Giannis can go for 50 and lead his friends by himself, cool. But when the Bulls is coming to town and run you out the room, those are the ones that haunt you. You could say, well, it's just one game, but those are the ones that haunt you late March, early April.
Yeah. No, the pressure is there, but this is what makes this season so fun. All right, let's talk about some of the music. Let's shift to your new EP, Views of a Lifetime. Love the title. Yeah. When I saw you release the title and the track list and all that, I thought about this. I was like, Sky always has projects that has a concept. And so is there one for this EP? And what is the title, Views of a Lifetime? What does that represent for you?
Yeah, there's absolutely a concept. With me, every single one it's going to be conceptual in some regard. And with this one, the idea is, okay, we're coming off of Keep Me Company, which was my last album, which was all about growth. So now that you've settled into this mode of growth, now you're looking back on what you grew from, right? You're looking back on what you grew out of and the changes that you made and some of the things that stayed the same or kind of adapted or whatever it may be from that growth. And you're looking back on that lifetime. You're looking back on that page that you just turned and everything that you expected on it, everything that you achieved, the goals that you didn't achieve and that you're trying to make sense of, the things that were out of your control, that you thought were in your control but didn't know what you were up against. And it's just a lot of realization of wondering and realizing what was, what is, and what to expect will be now that you've grown and made these changes. So you're just looking back, views of a lifetime. So on the project, I talk a lot about the things I expected getting into the rap game, almost 20 years ago, which it doesn't feel like it doesn't seem like it. But, my first retail project was an EP back in 2006. So I'm 19 years in the game. So I talk a lot about the things I expected, the dreams that I had, some of them fulfilled and some of them not being so. Some of that was out of choice. If I said, hey, I have this goal, I want to go here, and then you realize what it takes to go there, your morals kick in and you're like, well, I'm not going to be able to go there because what I have to do to go there, I'm not with that. So I have to pivot. And then you got to look back and be like, well, was the pivot worth it? Am I good? Yeah, I'm good. But dag, that would have been nice to fulfill that dream. So that's what it's about. It's about looking back and realizing what did and did not happen. So I speak on those things a lot on this project. A lot of the expectations I had coming up, getting into the game, and then where those things shifted and changed that, and some of them stayed the same and some of them didn't.
So I listened to you just say that, and I was thinking about personally because you and I have been doing what we do as pretty much the same amount of time, 19, 20 years.
Yeah.
I've been doing this in sports journalism. You've been doing this in hip hop. Um, did you, and I think about myself looking back at things in my career and the expectations you have when you're younger about how things will go in your career. When you're looking back and then putting this into this project, did you find this therapeutic in any way for you to do so? Did it help you in any way? And just,
Yeah,
yeah.
at times for sure. I have a record on here called The Soloist, produced by the other guys, and it just comes from you get in, you have these visions of what it's going to be. Certain people wind up in your world on your journey. Those people aren't with you on that journey anymore, but they're still running around on their own journeys and different things happen. And sometimes you sit back and you're like, it might be better to be a soloist. Like I became a soloist by default, and maybe that wasn't a bad thing. So it's those types of moments. Those are the therapeutic moments. Like The Soloist, I have another record called Half Bloom, where I talk about that. I'm saying, hey, man, we've done all this, but we're only at half bloom. And I say we, meaning myself and the fans and the listeners and supporters, like we're all in one. I'm looking at y'all, y'all looking at me. We expect certain things of one another, from the musician to the fan, but we're only at half bloom. It's been 19 years, but we haven't even really bloomed all the way yet. There's still so much more to go. There's still so much more to grow. And that's what the record Half Bloom is about. So those two records in particular were on the therapeutic side, like you said, but it's also a very raw album. My music is always very jazzy.
Yep.
This one is no different, but it's not as much on the jazz side as you may be used to. It's more raw production wise. It's still straight up hip hop, New York. Don't look for me to go trap or drill. That's not happening. But when I say it's a little less jazzy, people may be like, whoa, it's still 100% jazzy. My man Sean Taylor is still playing on records with that Harmon muted trumpet, but it's more raw, right? Like I've got Conductor Williams on a beat, which everyone loves Conductor right now and everything that he's doing, and he's doing marvelous things for hip hop. But his stuff is gritty and raw. My man Camouflage Monk from Griselda is on it, gritty and raw. My man Twami is on it, gritty and raw. So those things are on the project. Thelonious Martin, another raw, gritty producer from Chicago. So it's more raw production-wise, and sonically, it's a little more raw and a little more outside, in front of the store, cold weather, Newport soft pack, gritty hip-hop production-wise. But then I'm still gonna sneak the jazz in there, So it makes sense. Trust me, when you hear it, you're gonna love it. It's still what you want from a Skyzoo album, but I'm never gonna be the same. I'm just gonna have resemblance of who I am always.
Nah, that makes sense. And for people, I'm excited to hear the project. I got to hear one of the tracks. Sky was kind enough to let me hear the Sky's Light track early. It's what everybody thinks it is. We're dropping this the day that it drops, so you'll get to hear it too. Check that out when you hear it. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Really good one. But you kind of made me go to this because you're talking about your music. You said, your music has always been rooted in New York. I would say the culture, the community, the grind. So, and we both are big jazz fans and love that sound in hip hop. But I got to ask you this. I don't think I've ever asked you this question before. How much does being a Knicks fan shape your perspective as a musical artist? Does it have any impact at all whatsoever? Just everything you've watched with the Knicks, everything you've seen around the Knicks, the joys, the heartaches, the heartbreaks. Does that affect you as an artist at all, any kind of way?
It does, subconsciously and in a literal sense, right? Like, it's not like when I'm making records, I'm thinking about the Knicks, unless it's a Knick record, like Blue and Orange, everything. But, I think the grit, representing the city. My thing with the Knicks was always our team representing the city, and that changes over different rosters and eras of the Knicks, right? Like, of course, the early mid-90s Knicks with, Ewing and Mace and Oakley and Starks, that was such a representation of New York, right? And then you go to Marbury and Crawford, and that was such a great representation of New York, playground style ball and everything, and then you fast forward to the Melo era, my bro Melo and Amari and Tyson and Shump and JR, like that was super New York. Like those were New York guys, you could see them at Greenhouse later that night. Like those were super New York guys, right? So it's always about the team reflecting and representing the city. And the way that plays into me and my music is I'm always going to represent New York. I don't care where I live. I don't care where I'm writing and recording. I can be like the Woo and be recording in the Bahamas, on purple tape. It doesn't matter. It's going to be New York City. You're going to think I recorded it in somebody's basement, on Nostrand Ave. It's going to be New York. And I don't have to be sitting in New York to give you that, because I've been a New Yorker for 42 and a half years, and that's not going to change. So it can't get too much more New York. I don't ever have to step foot in New York again, and you would still be like, yo, that guy's from New York, 100%, just from how he walked in the store, So the music giving you that same feeling is the win for me.
Yeah, no, it is the win. I think that's always been there for you in your music. And I think something, Sky, fans, when they talk about your music, and I would agree with this, and we were talking about this before we started recording, just about some of my favorite albums of yours, and we have very similar in what you think are the same, but your music, just in terms of your writing and your pen, it plays like cinema. So I'll ask this, if this EP is sort of another set of views, right, which is part of your title, what do you hope that listeners see when they hear it? And like, what's the one thing or message/mission that you want them to walk away with from this project?
I would say that regardless of the change in the views, right? Like the way seeing things and, okay, the goal was this and it turned into that, just knowing who and what I did it for. And, I have a record called Love Day. And I said, it's one of my favorite records on the project. And one of the opening lines, I said, I put culture over money. I put strangers over me. And that's one of my favorite lines I've ever written in my career. If I had to pick 20 lines in my career, that's one of them. I put culture over money. I put strangers over me. Think about the idea of putting strangers over you. And what I mean by that is, I know if I go this way, I can make hundreds of millions of dollars. But I'm choosing to go this way and represent people who I don't even know, strangers, right? And put the best music forward and the best message and carry that baton and put that flag on and put that hat on and go out for strangers. I put the culture over money. I put strangers over me. And when you can honestly do that and sleep good at night, that speaks so much about your character. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but it speaks so much. So I want people to really understand that. And when they hear moments like that on this project, really realize that that's what's been done over the past 19 years and beyond. And it's like, wow, it's sacrifice, It's like, wow, he really, really did that for us. And he doesn't even know us. We know him from the music, but he doesn't know us. We're thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. We don't know, he doesn't know us, but we know him. So really understanding the gravity of that.
That's a really dope and powerful message there for sure. Do you have a favorite song on the album? I know it's hard. It's hard. Like, it's hard picking your favorite album.
Yeah,
it's
tough.
Song.
I would say Love Day is up there for sure. Half Bloom, the soloist, Sky's Light, produced by my man DJ Manipulator. That was me spinning and putting my take on Nas's Like, of course. So, a classic that we all love from, 99. And I was just like, something I had an idea for a while. And it was about finding the right moment, the right beat, the right time. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Sky's Like. So, that. Oh man, there's so many, man. The Wager, produced by my man Cartoon. That record is. There's so many, man.
Yeah,
it's 9 records,
9 tracks.
Joe Jackson, 9 kids, love them all.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I'm excited to hear the record fully. I have heard 1 track off of it. It's dope. I always love your projects. I guess the last thing before we get out of here, I got to ask you is, you talked about how the Knicks, they pretty much got to win it all. Are you willing to, here on New York Got Game, are you willing to make your prediction? Are the Knicks, Sky, going to win it all this year? Is this the year? You know what I mean? You and I have talked about this before. I know you will be here if there's a parade. We will be at the parade.
Oh, yeah,
we will see each other. We've talked about this before, but Absolutely. Is this the year, Sky, we get to see each other at the parade and rock out?
You see me in June.
Ooh.
You see me in June, baby. I'm riding.
Oh, man, this is the second person on this show to make the prediction that the Knicks are going to take it all the way this year. Sky, you did it, man. Views of a Lifetime, that's the new EP that is out on December 5th. Go support that. Get some physical copies, too. Sky, you putting that on vinyl, right? It's going to come out vinyl?
Oh, yeah. The vinyl will be out in January.
Oh.
Digital now, vinyl in January. So, absolutely, it'll be everywhere. But this Friday, December 5th, Views of a Lifetime. Right now, Sky's Light, produced by DJ Manipulator. Go grab it right now. Go turn it up. Play it 100 times. Run through it. Memorize it. Enjoy it. Whatever it is, man. Let's do it for us, for the culture, for hip-hop, for lyricism, and for the city.
Yeah, Sky's going to be doing it all. Sky will have a lot more coming up, including tours, all that stuff coming out soon. Sky, I got to get a copy of that on vinyl for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I always appreciate you, brother, for coming through, talking music, hip-hop, Knicks. Whenever you get to come on, I get to do my two favorite things. Get to talk hip-hop and basketball. Doesn't get better than that, man. We appreciate you. That is the great Skyzoo. As I said, please check out his new EP dropping this Friday, December 5th, Views of a Lifetime. It's going to be a good one. That is Skyzoo. I'm Dexter Henry. We'll catch you next time on New York Got Game.
And thanks for watching New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.